Mysterious anticipation, a stirring buzz in the Taiwanese business realm. On September 25th, 2023, in the Taiwanese business circle, there is a rumor that something big will happen after autumn. What could this big event be? At the same time, there is news that Li Shangfu is in trouble and Xi Jinping is going to launch a military crackdown. Is there a connection between these two events? What will happen? Who corresponds to the prophecy of pushback chart hexagram 46? We will share it with you today. Additionally, a highly lethal virus has emerged. Are you prepared? At the end of the program, there will have hidden information about it. We hope you will stick around till the end to feel the emotions conveyed in the Japanese person's letter. 2 days ago, Finance News commentator Hugh Caping revealed on Facebook that there's a rumor circulating in the Taiwanese business circle. It suggests that something big will happen after the Mid-Autumn Festival. She noticed that some Taiwanese business people are planning not to return after the Mid-Autumn Festival and are waiting to see what happens. Hu Taiping mentioned that considering the recent turmoil in the Chinese Communist Party's political situation, many high-ranking officials and military officers have been disappearing, and many of them were personally promoted by Xi Jinping. Statements made by Hu Taiping about something significant happening after the Mid-Autumn Festival, and Mr. Zhou Lanjian's friends claim that Xi Jinping is planning a military crackdown may or may not be related. We are observing the developments in the Chinese Communist Party's political landscape. It's clear that there are issues within Xi Jinping's regime, and they are not minor. Figures like Li Shangfu, who was personally promoted by Xi Jinping, and King Gang have fallen from grace. There are even rumors that Zhang Yuxia, the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, and Xi Jinping's childhood friend, is under close surveillance. Such a situation naturally leads to suspicion within the military. If even Xi's close associates are being apprehended, who else can consider themselves safe? Feng Chongyi, a China expert at the University of Sydney, believes that the Chinese Communist Party's military has a strong aversion to Xi Jinping. Professional military officers trained in military academies view Xi Jinping as an amateur causing chaos. They resent his actions, but they outwardly comply while harboring internal dissatisfaction. Therefore, there is significant conflict between the military and Xi Jinping. Ye Cheng, a former lieutenant colonel staff officer at the Plan of Ale Command, also mentioned that many of the Crown Prince Party within the military have been purged. This means that a substantial portion of the Chinese Communist Party's high-ranking officials are opposed to Xi Jinping and are actively working towards his removal. In such a situation, Xi Jinping may resort to starting a war to shift the crisis. Initiating a war would allow him to exert military control over everyone and force them to unite against a common external threat. This is why I previously discussed the possibility of China preparing for war and an attack on Taiwan. Interested parties can refer to my episode on the 23rd for more details. Regarding the historical prophecy, it remains uncertain how it will unfold. We need to wait and see. We shouldn't take this too seriously. It's just another perspective. Now let's discuss something that concerns everyone. Hong Kong's South China Post reported yesterday that Wuhan Institute of Virology expert Shi Zhengli warned in a paper published in July that there is a high likelihood of another coronavirus emerging in the future, and the world must be prepared, much like it prepared for COVID-19. Shi Zhengli's paper was published in the journal New Microbes and New Infections in July, but only gained attention in China 2 months later. In the paper, Shi Zhengli's team assessed 40 coronaviruses for their potential to infect humans, and half of them posed a high risk. The paper warns that if coronaviruses could cause diseases in the past, they are likely to do so again in the future. According to the paper, Xi Jinping's team created a new coronavirus strain called Xi'an by serially passaging coronaviruses in mice. This strain is known to be the most virulent among all known coronaviruses and can cause severe damage to mice, increasing the death rate to approximately 90%. Zhang, 58 years old, was recently promoted to academician of the Chinese Academy of Sciences by the Chinese Communist Party. However, he is a highly controversial figure. Many suspect that the source of the COVID-19 virus, which has been ongoing for over 3 years, could be linked to his laboratory at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Dr. Lin Xiaosu, a former director of the virus department at the U.S. Army Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, questions Xi Jinping's research. He believes that Xi Jinping's team has been conducting gain-of-function experiments, enhancing the functions of coronaviruses using various genetic editing techniques, potentially making them more infectious across species and more pathogenic. Dr. Lin Xiaosu questions what Xi Jinping's true intentions are and what the Chinese Communist Party is planning. He points out that Xi Jinping's team's experiments show that this new coronavirus strain can be highly lethal, particularly in older mice with weaker immune systems, with a death rate reaching around 90%. The COVID-19 pandemic has been ongoing for over 3 years now and has claimed the lives of over 6.95 million people worldwide, according to official figures. These numbers do not include China's mainland, as its data is not considered accurate due to underreporting. If China's data were included, both the infection and death tolls would be significantly higher. In addition, there's a story from a cosmetic artist named Lai Rong, who changed careers during the pandemic and became a mortician. He stated that during the pandemic, the busiest places in China were hospitals, funeral homes, and crematoriums. He mentioned that bodies were lined up on the streets. Told the Epoch Times that the real data is much more terrifying than you can imagine. Last year, too many people died. He said that our county's crematorium now burns around 20 bodies a day. But last year, during the epidemic, they had to burn 200 to 300 bodies a day. And at its peak, they even burned around 500 bodies a day, which was considered normal at the time. Regarding the number of deaths during the epidemic, Li Rong estimates that it would be no less than 300 million. He bluntly stated that in recent years, the number of people who died nationwide will not be less than 300 million. The internal statistics of national funeral homes show more than 200 million people, but it's not accurate because many people in rural areas did not choose cremation but buried them directly. The real numbers are definitely more terrifying than you can imagine. Rising infections in Shanghai. Is another wave coming? Let's talk about the CCP virus leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which has already caused the deaths of many people. The CCP praised Xi Jinping and promoted the Xi'an to an academician. Xi'an did not stop but continued to research his virus, trying to make this virus more infectious and spread faster with a higher mortality rate. What is Xi'an trying to do? In recent times, the CCP's top-level issues have been constantly discussed. So in recent times, we have been constantly tracking the CCP's internal struggles and battles. However, in many hospitals and places in mainland China, there have been overcrowding situations. In response to this phenomenon, the CCP officials stated that most patients were suffering from mycoplasma pneumonia, but we have always been skeptical of the CCP's claims. Zhu Jianhong, the head of the neonatology department at Beijing Maya's Zhongyan Children's Hospital, said that all our doctors are saying that this year's virus is a big mess. It's like sometimes we used to have one virus coming and going, and this year they are all mixed together. Zhu Yonghong said that many diseases are now being discovered, including mycoplasma respiratory tract pouch nose virus, influenza, subinfluenza, and even a few days ago, we also detected chlamydia. There are no longer any seasonal patterns this year, so this year is one that everyone needs to pay special attention to. Dr. Zhu Yanhong's introduction of this situation, in addition to overturning the CCP's propaganda of controllability and eradicability, there is another point that is quite suspicious. Among the many patients, are there any patients infected with the new strain of the virus researched by Xi Jinping? In other words, has the new bat virus already spread among the population? According to mainland media reports, since September, there has been a sharp increase in infection cases in Shanghai. On the morning of September 13th, Shanghai Fudan University-affiliated Children's Hospital only opened for 2 hours and 90 children registered, all with fever. The number of daily visits reached 900. One Shanghai netizen said that his daughter came home on Monday and said that everyone in her class was coughing, and his daughter also started to have a fever and cough in the evening. However, when school started, only his daughter wore a mask. The teacher even called the netizen and said that the epidemic was over and they should not wear masks. Mr. Yang in Shanghai also said that many children, including his granddaughter, were infected even before kindergarten started because the neighbor's child infected her while playing. Once school started, the virus spread among the students, causing an outbreak. Mr. Yang also revealed. Doctors at the hospital emphasized that it was not the novel coronavirus, but a so-called mycoplasma infection. However, the infected children had symptoms similar to those of the CCP virus, such as sore throat, cough, abdominal pain, and even vomiting, which were extremely similar to the symptoms of CCP virus infection. In addition, Sichuan province reported 18,000 new CCP virus cases in August, but netizens questioned the accuracy of the data. For patients infected with the CCP virus who experienced sore throat, the CCP officials said it was collective pharyngitis. On September 22, the CCP, State Council's Joint Prevention and Control Mechanism for Epidemic Prevention and Control emphasized measures for epidemic prevention and control during the Mid-Autumn Festival and the National Day holidays. Measures include strengthening epidemic prevention and control during travel, tourism activities, and at key institutions. Chinese citizens who have experienced 3 years of dynamic, clean world risk control are very sensitive to this notice from the authorities. They suspect that the CCP may once again implement epidemic control and risk control measures. Some netizens mocked that they should prepare health codes and travel codes and continue nucleic acid testing and isolation. In fact, some schools in Shanghai have already begun closed management. A beautiful woman said to the residents of Xinjiang, "The epidemic in Shanghai is back and hospitals are crowded with many people. There are many 3 positive and 4 positive cases. Some campuses have started to implement closed measures and entry and exit are restricted. There is a lot of news like this, and I won't list them all here. I just want to tell everyone that it seems that this virus is still spreading quite widely in mainland China, but how far is it from developing into a pandemic?" So I hope all friends, not only friends in mainland China, but also everyone, pay more attention and take personal protection seriously. Of course, protection has multiple aspects, including medical and health aspects, as well as psychological protection, which is even more important. I often say in the program that kindness is a universal remedy, and a kind heart can keep disasters away, including diseases. In fact, many people don't realize this now. Chinese people used to be very kind, but in recent decades, the toxins injected by the CCP have mutated and their thoughts have become hostile to everyone and less like good people. So, Chinese people sometimes show a strong sense of hostility. In late August, the CCP was hyping up Japan's nuclear-treated water. Today, the South Korean Ministry of Government Administration and Home Affairs reported on the second inspection of Fukushima's nuclear-treated water. The inspection results showed no abnormalities at the sea discharge site and main discharge equipment. The recent CCP Philippines conflict. In the previous day, the Philippine Coast Guard announced that they had dismantled and removed the floating barriers set up by CCP on disputed coral reefs. The official video shows a person in a mask and snorkel using a knife to cut the ropes tied to a white buoy. Another video shows an anchor being dragged from the water onto a wooden boat. The Philippine Coast Guard stated that these barriers had been dismantled as per the president's instructions and that they posed a threat to navigation, in clear violation of international law. This action by the Philippines demonstrates their commitment to defending their national sovereignty and the livelihood of fishermen in the area. However, the CCP's response has been somewhat restrained. There were 4 Chinese vessels in the same area at the time, and they likely knew there were journalists on the Filipino ships, so they did not engage in provocations. A few hours later, the floating barriers were found to be no longer interconnected and had lost their blocking effect. The CCP quietly removed these barriers after the Philippine Coast Guard's actions. In response, a spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Wang Wenbin, stated today that the Philippine statement was entirely unilateral and China firmly defends its sovereignty over Hwangyan Island and its maritime rights and interests. Wang Wenbin did not specify how China intends to defend its sovereignty and maritime rights and interests, leaving room for speculation. It's possible that they might try to set up another buoy line, which could lead to further confrontations with the Philippines. Wang Wenbin's warning to the Philippines not to provoke or cause trouble may sound stern, but it can also be seen as a subtle way to avoid a direct confrontation. Chinese media personality Yu Xijin made a brief comment on Weibo, saying Hwangyan Island's stone is again stinky and hard. While the Philippines' actions in cutting the floating barriers were provocative, it is clear that the situation is delicate and neither side wants to escalate into a full-blown conflict. There is also an underlying concern about the involvement of the United States in the region. The U.S. has a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines, signed in 1952, which commits the U.S. to come to the defense of the Philippines in case of an armed attack in the Pacific region, including the South China Sea. On February 21, U.S. Secretary of Defense Austin stated that if another country were to launch an armed attack against Philippine forces, aircraft, or public vessels in the South China Sea, the U.S. would activate its defense commitment under the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. The situation in the South China Sea, particularly around Hwangyan Island, remains tense and sensitive due to territorial disputes and geopolitical factors. The actions of both the Philippines and the Chinese Communist Party are carefully measured to avoid a direct confrontation while asserting their respective claims. The involvement of the United States adds another layer of complexity to the situation, and any escalation could have significant regional and global implications.